Hi, welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Janelle.
And I'm Karen. Together, we're diving into real, unfiltered conversations about what it means to wake up as white women in a world shaped by bias, power dynamics, and inherited patterns. We're here to challenge norms, examine our assumptions, and foster empathy through raw, intergenerational dialogue. It's not always easy, and we don't always agree, but we show up anyway.
Hi, Karen. Before we move into reflection, can I say something you just said really funny to the audience?
Yeah, what did I say?
Audience members, before we started this podcast, I said, I can't believe we're actually doing a podcast. Just kind of it hit me, and Karen goes, I know, but I feel like I never talk to you anymore. Mm-hmm. Listeners, we just spent 2 weeks together at our cabin in a small, isolated, small house. That's as much together time
it is a lot
as you can possibly get. So I appreciate that even with the podcast and spending 2 weeks together, you still don't feel like it's enough me time.
It's that a few times now.
I love you.
I totally forgot about that. But I guess we haven't driven back and forth together. That used to be more of our deep conversation spaces.
Fair.
Traveling.
It just was a funny.
That is.
It was a funny comment.
Okay. Speaking of reflection, Janelle, we were going to reflect on how we were going to work on decolonizing our life.
Yes. So am I first?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I think what we talked about last time is you had some great points. They were a little maybe further down the line of growth. They were a little, I don't want to say out there because they can be attainable for anyone, but they weren't maybe first steps. And so I've been trying to think a lot about like what would first steps in decolonizing. And we definitely talked about food waste as one. And given my history with eating disorders, food waste has been a big one for me to actually like empower myself, as in, it's okay to buy foods that I might not find safe and hopefully I eat them. But if I don't eat them, it's okay to waste them. And I've kind of always had this power struggle with it that I understand through my healing with that. It was also a lot of privilege to be able to buy groceries knowing that I may not use all those groceries kind of thing. And so for me, I think food waste is a big one that I'm going to like work on, is really being, and I want to clarify, I'm not the typical American who buys most people, if they looked at my fridge, would be like, you have nothing in here. But for me, it's still like just being a little bit more intentional about that, and also like much more about my garden and stuff, and really making sure like utilizing, like I love to plant and garden more for like the aesthetic of things, that I sometimes do have food waste within my garden because I plant so many things of lettuce because they're so cute in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it's like more lettuce than any human can possibly consume by themselves. And so, or right now my mint plant is kind of out of control. And so I really want to work on figuring out like what are ways that I can better utilize that so I'm not actually wasting that produce, whether it's giving it away, whether it's finding different methods for it. But I think that's more in my mind.
You could do a little mint stand.
I have a lot of mint.
No, it's funny. Like one of the ways that you can go that second step is to share it. I mean, that's one of the things we've been talking about a lot, is to live in a shared economy. So,
and I heard something so cool is Vermont and Maine just passed this, and I don't remember the name of the bill, but essentially it's allowing for any individual to actually become a producer of food. And so that they want to there's still standards you have to meet if you're actually selling or engaging, but they want to make less red tape so there's more food to go around so people can create local produce and shared food. And it literally, I think, like this week just became, I saw something, but that's something so cool that I think some states are doing to help reduce food waste and also to increase reduce food scarcity, I should say, too.
Yeah, the idea of scarcity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, when we were talking in our podcast last week, or we were talking about decolonizing our mindset or our habits, and we kind of overstated one of the stories, and it was a history story. And the reality is, being open to diverse histories is a part of decolonization. And so it really is.
Well, tell me more about what do you mean that we overstated?
I can't remember what we were saying, but I was kind of, I'd have to go back and listen to the podcast, but I was making again, I was making a comment around someone's historical story, and we kind of said, well, that's not an example of decolonization.
Oh.
When in fact, being open to histories is decolonization. And so I thought about that a lot this week. Like, okay, well, there's some of the ways that I know they're not the big steps. I know I'm not going to Capitol Hill and changing laws, but I think I'm thinking more in terms of laws in relationship to humanity.
Ooh, good one.
And not just about power, not just about greed, not just about reclamation, taking land, things that are what we would define as colonization. So I think I've been trying to say, okay, I'm listening. Like, for example, recently, one of the laws that we talked about it last week, the law regarding taking over public land.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't passed. And so for me, I read the pre-law, read what happened, and just being open to that kind of news story, which I don't think I would have been in the past, made me go, wait, I am decolonizing my mind because I'm also thinking about it through a different lens. And so I know, like I think you challenged us last week to it's not about selling our property, but it is about, and maybe it is, maybe you come to that, but you don't have to start there. And so I'm trying to be open to myself about the ways in which I am doing it.
Well, and I love that.
Oh, and another thing you said last week too, and we also talked about the zero-sum game and the scarcity mindset. So we just had a family reunion last week, and I really tried to think about everyone was at our cabin, and I really tried to think about it more from the lens of, this isn't mine, this is mine, this is a shared space. Yeah. And I think I was able to do that pretty well. And I don't necessarily always enter that way. Sometimes I enter like, oh, this is my private space, and I don't know if I want everyone there or whatever it is. And I think entering in a shared communal space is part of what I'm doing. I don't know.
No, I love that you said this. This kind of goes back to a blog article I wrote for us on the individualism, individual mindset, and how, so what you're doing by educating yourself on things that are going on. So this land rights and something you said you wouldn't do before. This is those are little steps to take you outside of individualization.
Yeah.
And though they don't feel big in the moment, they do have big impact down the road because you are now aware of these things. And whether you take the next step to get involved, I don't know, but the awareness is the first step. Yeah. And so this was something that I was looking at is just oftentimes we don't vote in local elections because it's not the big presidential election that we all hear about. Right. It's smaller, but those are big things that impact the community that you live in, kind of thing. And it's just taking the time to educate and learn, and just learn at first.
Well, and I think one of the things that, I hate to say it, as a white woman, one of my privileges, I can exit these spaces really easy. Yeah. Because the world, in so many ways, is built for white people and white standards, white norms, all the things we've talked about. So I know someone might go, wow, that's really low bar. And yet stepping into it is the start of building higher expectations. So anyways, that's kind of, and I loved, we talked about the book, The Service Berry, about sharing our community.
And we even got to eat a service berry. A friend of ours has service berries
in their garden. And I liked the taste.
I did not like the taste.
I thought it tasted fruity and nutty, and John just thought it tasted like wood.
Yeah, that's a great description of what I thought. It was little.
But I like to think about it in its generous sense. Yeah. So, okay, today is your topic.
Okay. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. which is, I guess, what we're doing.
Yeah.
I want to talk about echo chambers, and I want to talk about how echo chambers, especially specifically in social media, have really impacted the way we think. I read a brilliant book the other day by it's called Careless People, and it's about Facebook and Facebook's algorithm, and it's a lot more about kind of the whole process of growing Facebook internationally. And there were some interesting things that came out about Facebook's marketing techniques around, for example, they often marketed dieting pills to teenagers who would post about being lonely, or marketing guns to teenagers who posted about being angry. There's even a statistic that says things like Facebook actually boost 5 times a post that has anger within it, which has lead to the increase of like higher rates of misinformation and toxicity. And so we all know the Facebook, like I think the Facebook has been in the news for years. So we're all, not all of us, but a lot of us are kind of understanding, well, that's the Facebook mindset. But I want to do an exercise today to kind of talk about other social media. So,
well, wait, I want to
jump in there.
Like a key word here is the ethics of algorithm.
Well, yes.
And isn't that interesting? And so,
but I don't even want to dig into the ethics. I want to take this as a personal growth journey for us to understand. I think so often we hear the ethics and we kind of project it. It's too far removed.
It's funny. I was thinking about this ethics of algorithms, and you're right. Like, if I'm going to decolonize my mind, how is this, habits, how is this taking back power? How is this creating greed?
Yes.
How is this creating those kind of capitalistic forms?
Yes.
And how easily I, as someone who kind of is minimally into social media, I could say, well, it's not about me.
Yeah.
Right? But boy, when you just said, guns and anger.
Yeah.
That really concerns me.
Well,
so anyways, there's ways that I could start looking at the ethics of algorithms, in which I haven't done a lot.
And actually, now that you say that, I do have a funny little story about you one time. And this is, I think, showing the different generational divides, where my generation is much more aware of where advertising comes from. This was a couple years ago, and you were complaining about Instagram and all the diet ads they were showing you. And you're like, it's so annoying. And I had to break it to you. That's not everyone's feed.
Yeah.
That's your feed, because
I was looking
at diet ads and stuff. And so they were really feeding you that. Yeah. And so anyways, a really interesting statistic that I also learned today is 70% of YouTube watched is actually driven by their recommendation algorithm. Wow. So most people go in for one intended video, but majority of what they watch, 7 out of 10 minutes of what they watched, is recommended by YouTube.
Oh, absolutely. Like I used YouTube tutorials all the time when I'm using technology, and I rarely start at the first one.
Yeah.
I usually go off to the side screen.
Yeah. And again, they all seem innocent until you start breaking it down. So I want to do an exercise right now with you. I want you to open up your TikTok. And I say TikTok because your Instagram is probably going to be mostly friends and family.
Yeah.
Open your TikTok. You can put it on silent so we don't have to hear it all.
Okay.
I want you to scroll through the first 5 and tell us what the themes, what the race of the people were. I want to get an understanding.
Okay. So right now I have...
And I can do the same thing.
You?
Yeah, if you want to show us.
So it looks like an Asian guy eating a sandwich.
Okay.
Then I have a little baby.
Okay.
A little white baby. Then I have a white young man talking about cabinet meetings.
Okay. Political stuff.
Okay. I have a woman talking about exercise.
Okay.
Age. And this is a political young person talking about politics.
Okay. What?
All
white and one Asian person.
And one Asian person.
So let me do my TikTok now for everyone. I'm going to put on silent so we don't all have to hear the...
Actually, this is where Janelle and I are beginning to learn that we need to be better interviewers. If I was an NPR reporter, which I listen to a lot, they would have described this better. They wouldn't have thought that I'm just showing my TikTok on YouTube. So describe it.
So, that's a good point. So mine is actually a person of color creator who is stitching all of these people talking about PBS being taken away.
Okay.
The next one, oh, this is one of my favorite creators. Her thing is called Misinformation. She's a white creator who does these skits around misinformation between political things or just different stuff. And she's very interesting. The next is a white woman talking about men and talking about just like the loneliness epidemic with men.
And she's probably in her mid-30s.
Yeah, mid-30s. Next one's an ad. The next one is also a white woman talking about sexism in the workplace.
Okay.
And then, this is a mutual of mine, and she's talking about not supporting her MAGA friends because of political. And so I think what's interesting.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah. And what I find fascinating about this, which is I am shocked because I actually thought, so my TikTok algorithm is I follow a lot of people of color.
Yeah.
Like if you look at my algorithm, I would say it's almost 50-50. And so I'm actually shocked. I expected to pull up my phone
and the first five.
And have the first five and at least have 50-50 white and people of color. And so it's fascinating even there to me in this lesson is even me who's following 50% of people of color creators, my For You page is still not showing me 50% of people of color.
Well, I have to say, since we started this podcast and I manage the White Women Wake Up Instagram, I am now, and this is a topic we almost talked about that we should talk about. I am on a lot of BIPOC creators' Instagram, a lot. So much so that I feel like, oh, the world has changed.
Yes.
Or I'm always surprised when I have conversations with people that are just white women that are just starting this journey, that they're just starting this journey. So you're right. I don't go on TikTok that often, but if you were to look at my Instagram feed, it is a lot of persons of color now. It wasn't that way last November.
But this is what I'm saying. And this is, so it's what's so interesting. And it's almost like backfired on me. That's what I thought the difference was going to be in both of our TikTok algorithms. Because like I said, for several years, ever since pretty much pandemic, and I hate to say it, I was influenced by George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. I really listened to looking at my algorithm at the time, Instagram, and really making sure it was actually as diverse as I wanted my opinion to be.
That's great.
And so that was something for the last 5 years I had. So this is what I'm saying, the fascinating thing about social media is I have really crafted to have a diverse following. Yet, when we still did this exercise, they are still showing me white people. And I didn't.
But you know what was interesting? You didn't have anyone with different ages.
That is,
I mean, if we start looking at, you're just talking about race, right?
Yeah.
But if we start talking about demographics, your demographics were all people your age.
Yeah, yours, but you didn't have an older demographic.
Yeah, I had
a baby.
I had that one woman that she was working out. She was my age working out.
Oh yeah,
I did, and then I had the baby. But no, I'm not trying.
No, I'm not
trying to say I'm better.
I'm not saying you're better either. Yeah. My board point is the irony is I was going in this to show a point of what my page looks like, and what's fascinating is that even like I'm saying, I'm curious, and so even me coming in thinking that I knew I was in a liberal, much more of a liberal bubble, but I was still thinking I was even farther of a bubble than I thought I was. And to see that they're still feeding back things that perpetuate my own opinion in life, my own echo chamber.
Not only your own echo chamber, but, echo chamber is actually this, but this idea of the subjects you're just interested in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think the thing is, I think you're hitting on an interesting conversation because the thing you're really hitting on is if you go back to social media in its infancy, sure, it was about our interest.
Yeah.
But we were only spending maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes on social media. Now when we're all spending probably a good hour. I mean, we just spent a whole family reunion together and every generation was doing something. doing something
on their phone.
On their phone. So, so if we're looking that we're all like, let's say minimum half an hour to an hour of some sort of social media feed, this is now like it's perpetuating this self-interest that you're talking about. And it's perpetuating this self-space.
Yes.
And it's not only social media, it's news. So for example, and we know this, we've talked about it, everyone's talked about it, and yet we don't really do a lot about it. There is this one TikTok, or not TikTok, where these two women from South Africa, they take media from the United States and they dissect it through their lens. And that's
you were telling me about this.
That's a really interesting one because now, I can't remember whether using liberal or conservative media or doing both, but the idea is we don't have these channels that actually dissect what it is we're looking at, right? It's just this constant loop of newsfeed.
Yes. And what I think I'm trying to get at here is what I'm bringing up is not anything new to anyone.
Yeah.
I think most people recognize that their algorithm is built for them. And like people even joke about it. Like I joked with my brother recently, a family member of ours likes to watch pimple popper videos. Mm-hmm. I have to say I find some of those entertaining, but I would never look at it because I know my feed would just be filled with it.
Yeah,
and that's not something I want to look at all the time.
Yeah.
Or, for example, there's been times I've gotten into van life or like...
mine was totally into van life.
Just like goes...
Summer I was totally into van life.
Or for some reason lately, there's been a lot of yacht life on mine.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is, when there's silly things like that, I think we're much more aware of how often they come up because they're such a niche topic that it's very obvious to point out this is coming up in my feed a lot and I'm re-engaging with this to keep that information coming. I think when it starts to come to like these opinions, and this is what I'm saying, these more echo chambers of opinions and not necessarily like niche products, that's when we're not being as aware of how much we're absorbing.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm even shocked to see when I did that exercise, how much of still white opinions I was absorbing when I've so intentionally tried to go after people of color, diverse opinions, like queer people. And so there was one queer woman on my account when I came up. And, but yeah, that was a really interesting exercise. So I think that's what I also want to get at is like, really like, where can we be so conscious about this? Like first step, like I said, conscious about who you're following. That's the first step.
Well,
really making sure.
To be honest, I think for those of you who have not gotten on our Instagram page, I am actively promoting new books and new podcasts so that we open up our perspective.
Yes.
And so I think that, and because of that, my feed in that particular my Instagram feed is very, very diverse. Now, the downside of that, here's the effect of that is I also am assuming the world has already done these stories. So it was really funny the other day. I was with a friend and it was a white woman and we were having a conversation about diversity or not even about diversity, just kind of, diverse historical perspectives. I was shocked at how little this person knew because I'm part of this other Instagram feed that I'm beginning to learn all these stories. And I then became, I don't want to say judgmental, but I was one-upping them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, that's like nothing. That's not even a story. And so that's like old news.
Which is, we've talked about, is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do here.
We're trying to have conversations together.
And I think what's interesting is this is something I've experienced with you often for years. And I think you have felt shamed by our conversations. I know my aunt has felt shamed by my conversations, but it's because I've always been one step ahead. And so things that seem so now natural in conversation to me are not brought up in your like circles or your atmosphere. And so what comes off as shame is, like you said, more shock.
Yeah.
Like, but it comes off to shame as you don't know that, when it's more, in my opinion, like everyone in my echo chamber knows that. I'm surprised that has not come up in your purview.
Well, I think this is actually a really good question based on your conversation. So what would have come up in our conversations? So, for example, in my generation, or the people I hung out with, years before before the DI and probably before George Floyd, let's talk about it, that space, we would talk a lot about self-help.
Yeah.
Like, are we expressing our feelings? Are we feeling our feelings? A lot of it would have been like, it's manifested now in your generation as self-care.
Yeah.
In my generation, it was just self-help.
Yeah.
Like trying to find yourself. That circled that, in diet and exercise was a primary conversation, or how do you raise your kids, or some of those things. It wasn't about large political, but
that was your circle.
But this was my circle.
This is what I'm trying to say is, I think with social media, we can now grasp farther parts of the globe to fill our circles.
Yeah.
But everyone still is in the same echo chamber as they probably previously were. Because I guarantee you, in your generation, 60s, 70s, there were probably a lot of other women your age talking about many other topics that weren't just diet, exercise, and self-help.
Yeah.
There were probably other topics. And so this is what we're saying, even though I think social media...
it was a white woman, Protestant, evangelical, self-help circle.
Yeah. And you had gone, but because you didn't seek anyone else, that's all you heard, and that's what you assumed the average person was talking about. And I think now with social media, because we are so diverse and can pull from all over, it's even more confirmation bias that, everyone's thinking and talking like this because these people from the ends of the earth are also having the same conversations I'm having. And again, it's just reinforcing more siloed echo chambers.
Well, I remember one of the big things that Brené Brown did early on is she talked about how healthy it is to normalize.
Yes.
So this is how much things have changed. So in my generation, because I wasn't constantly having conversations with someone in New York or someone in Colorado. I was having conversations with my peeps in my bubble, in my space, right?
Yeah.
And in my space, like you said, there was commonalities. And it wasn't actually even until, in a lot of ways, when we all got on Zoom and we started normalizing our spaces, our house, or TikTok became the like you said, confirmation bias, but this language of normalization. And like Brené Brown said in one of her books, that when we normalize something, it helps us in our growth. But we've now moved normalization into this space of affirmation or confirmation, more than even affirmation.
And that's what I was going to say is I think she has a very valid point.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe slightly dated, or not even dated, but it's almost like the first step.
Yeah.
Because I do think there's healing that needs to happen as individuals if you've always felt like an outsider.
Yeah.
So there is healing. Like my number one folder on TikTok is I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Like I have so many different folders, but like I can relate to that and save things. And there is this sense of like when you normalize and you feel people who have struggled with things that you felt so alone with.
Oh, yeah.
How freeing that feels.
Did you hear about the new Barbie doll?
No.
She's a diabetic.
Oh.
And they have, and all these doctors and young girls are so excited because there's finally a Barbie doll that shares one of their challenges.
Well, and this is where was always the core essence of Barbie, of being, before Barbie got taken over by the patriarchy, but like being whoever you wanted to be and being.
But that's going that's going
beyond.
But what I was trying to use was this example of
normalizing
a shared experience and seeing that you're not.
Well,
an outsider.
Well, and they say the same thing with dolls. It took companies decades to create dolls of color.
Yeah.
And so poor Black girls, poor, Asian women had to walk around with white dolls, and that doesn't help their self-esteem to normalize who they are.
And yet now, what I hear you say is this almost this space of like
normalizing. So
can create this echo chamber. Doesn't always. It affirms some of our challenges, but it can create where we need to be careful is it doesn't create an echo chamber.
Yeah. And it doesn't also, then as we've talked about, there's still this place, especially for white women. And I think the thing is, when we talk about that with Brené Brown, I think that's a great generalization for people who have harmed. And we've all had harm. But when it comes to white women, we do sit in a world of comfort. And we do sit in a world that is still pretty normalized.
Yeah.
And because the world is built mostly for us. And so we talk a lot about, like, for white women, the importance of discomfort in growth is.
Yeah.
And so kind of really looking into what?
And I have such a hard time with it.
I know. We do. White women were really taught to seek comfort. I mean, it's a natural reaction. All people are taught to seek comfort. But white women in general have been built in a society that creates comfort for us. And we have the privilege to find comfort more than others. And so I do think normalization, but normalization can create too much comfort. And being in a discomfort, like an uncomfortable place, seeking diverse opinions, seeking things outside of yourself is where you're going to find growth.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, now that we've really gotten into the language of decolonizing, one of the places that we can decolonize is our algorithm.
Yes.
And we could look for diverse stories. Okay.
Yes.
So so if we're going to talk about reflection, or
reflection
move
time.
Towards that, I like that you're reminding us that these algorithms are just reinforcing our echo chambers. They're just telling us what we want to hear. We're not necessarily growing from them. We're not necessarily learning from other people, learning outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we know is colonization was all about self, all about power, all about our own advancement. And so if one of the ways that we want to decolonize our habits, that would be one of them.
Yeah. And I don't want to say these algorithms aren't about learning and growth, because some of them have great learning and growth to them.
Yeah.
It's just about checks and balances. Where are you spending too much time on one place and ignoring other places? Are there ways that you can really strengthen and diversify what you listen to?
And would this be a way to build our own empathy?
Yes. Yeah. It's a great one.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Karen.
Thanks for joining us on White Women Wake Up. We hope today's conversation sparks something in you, whether it's a reflection, a new question, or a deeper commitment to showing up with empathy and accountability. If you found this episode meaningful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can also connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or whitewomenwakeup.com.
Substack.
We love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going.
Keep waking up.
Until next time, stay curious, be open, and keep waking up. Bye. How do you turn the volume on the headphones? I don't know. Okay. Can you turn it down a little bit?
Not really. You're at the bottom. Oh, unless. Oh, we're at the top.
We're at the.
Is that better?
This is the audio production.
Well, it's confusing. Are you recording already?
Yeah, I am.
Well,
I thought.